I affirm the resolution that the United States federal government should forgive all federal student loan debt. Forgive is defined as the release of borrowers from their obligation to repay part of or all of their federal student loan debt. That's according to Investopedia. Federal student loan debt is defined as money borrowed from the federal government to assist a borrower in their education. The debt is the amount due, as according to the Federal Student Aid Center. In my case, total absolution of all borrowers from their debt is assumed. I affirm the resolution on the basis that forgiving federal student debt would be economically beneficial, would improve the mental and physical health of Americans, and would further societal welfare in America. Contention 1, economic impacts. Answer 23 says that canceling student debt may add $109 billion on average to the annual GDP for the next 6 years. Canceling student loan debt may add up to 1.5 million new jobs. Student loan debt cancellation may lift up to 5.2 American households out of poverty. The Roosevelt Institute in 2021 stated that canceling student debt provides an immediate financial boost, increasing borrowers' freedom and mobility, allowing them to change jobs, pay down debts, or move, and increasing the average yearly pay by $3,000 over a 10-year period. Freeing up funds through debt cancellation would allow millions of borrowers to spend into the broader economy. Short-term consumption levels could be boosted by as much as 4%, increasing real GDP by between 86 billion and 108 billion over 10 years. Clearly, debt cancellation has the opportunity to stimulate the economy and provide assistance to many families burdened with student debt. Increased economic mobility would make it easier for Americans to acquire useful jobs with their degrees and contribute to society and the overall economy of the country. Contention 2, health. In study, Simon et al. 2019, it has been revealed that medical student debt levels are negatively associated with mental well-being and academic outcomes, and a high debt is likely to drive students towards choosing higher paying specialties. In addition, reported levels of financial stress were high among medical students and correlated with debt. Finally, debt was also shown to be associated with poor academic performance. Additionally, Novak 23 states that a study published in the Journal of Evidence-Based Social Work analyzed 85,000 comments from Twitter and Reddit on student loan debt and mental health from 2009 to 2020. Researchers found high levels of mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, and fear and anger associated with loans. High amounts of debt that continue to surmount has adverse effects on the American society. This will inevitably lead to reduced productivity and economic activity from the mental stresses that afflict over 45.3 million debtors in America. This is also observable on the level of the individual. People should not be subjected to unfair stressors in an already stressful modern life. Contention 3, societal welfare. Answer 2023 states that Black and African American college graduates owe an average of $25,000 more in student loans than white college graduates. 58% of student loan debt belongs to women. Women of color who borrow to pay for college are 12% more likely to have student loan debt than white women. From this, it can be concurred that student debt disproportionately affects Americans of color or American women. Thus, alleviating this debt could help them get head starts in life and work against societal barriers against them. Finally, White 2023 says that less parental and generational wealth, less home equity to finance a loan, and fewer savings. Students of color are forced to take on more than debt to cover tuition and living expenses to make up for the wealth gap between them and their white peers. Data from the U.S. Department of Education indicates that around 86% of Black students take on student debt compared with only around 68% of white students. Black students also typically owe more than white students. Black borrowers take out an average of $39,000 in student loans, while white students borrow an average of $29,000. From this, we can clearly see that there are racial inequities in the student loan system. Therefore, by forgiving them, the American government and the American people can start to work against these inequalities and start to push African American students into higher positions in society. For these aforementioned reasons, affirming the resolution would bring relief to millions of Americans across the country. Thus, affirmative is the right course of action for the country. I negate the resolution that the United States federal government should forgive all federal student loan debt. Forgive is defined as the release of borrowers from their obligation to repay part of or all of their federal student loan debt, as according to Investopedia. Federal student loan debt is defined as money borrowed from the federal government meant to assist the borrower in their education. The debt is the amount due, as according to the Federal Student Aid Center. In my case, total absolution of all borrowers from their debt is assumed. I negate the resolution on the basis that forgiving all national student loan debt would be immensely expensive and hold adverse effects on the economy. The proposition would be unfair to those who had already paid their loans or didn't go to college, and this initiative would inevitably not solve the underlying issues of America's current college system. Contention 1, economic impacts. Peterson 23 says that the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget estimates that the announced debt cancellation plan will cost between 330 and 390 billion, with a central estimate of 360 billion. However, even this is a low estimate. This is President Joe Biden's plan, which would be limited to $10,000 forgiven per borrower. But we assume that the resolution is initiating full federal student forgiveness and would not be limited by an arbitrary dollar limit. Looney 21 says that based on data from the Department of Education, forgiving all federal student loans, as Senator Bernie Sanders proposed, would cost in the order of $1.6 trillion. Forgiving student debt up to $50,000 per borrowers, as Senators Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer have proposed, would cost about $1 trillion. And limiting loan forgiveness to $10,000, as President Biden has proposed, would cost about $373 billion. From here, we can see that there's an immense cost associated with federal student loan forgiveness. Therefore, this would have to be approached with scrutiny to avoid adding unnecessary deficits. The CRFB 22 states that growing debt also directly affects the economic opportunities available to every American. If high levels of debt crowd out private investments in capital goods, workers would have less to use in their jobs, which would translate to lower productivity and therefore lower wages. From this, we can conclude that adding deficits up to $1 trillion is financially irresponsible. It would further harm the U.S. economy and work against the interests of the American public. Adding on to this, Rating 18 says that student loans may be a liability on the consumer balance sheet, but they constitute an asset for Uncle Sam. It is about 42.7% of the total federal assets. Student loans are our government's largest financial assets. Absolving this for the sake of making people feel better about their financial situations would be extremely irresponsible, and if anything, would require a gradual approach, which is not aligned with our interpretation of the resolution. Contention 2, social issues. The Association of Public Land Grant Universities reports that, on an annual basis, median earnings for bachelor degree holders are $36,000, or 84% higher than those whose highest degree is a high school diploma. The earnings gap between college graduates and those with less education continues to widen. In 2021, median income for recent graduates reached almost $52,000 a year for bachelor degrees holders aged 22 to 27. For high school graduates the same age, median earnings are $30,000 a year. So, people who choose to go to college earn significantly higher wages in life than those who choose not to go. Even though graduates have this advantage in life, the people who choose not to get degrees would now bear the partial financial responsibility to pay for people to have their debt absolved. Hansen 23 also states that $33,000 is the mean average student loan debt for the past decade. And the average starting salary bachelor degree holders in the past 10 years is $53,000. This means that from college, they make enough per year to start paying off their student loan debt. In Safe Year 2020, a conducted survey found that 46% of Americans think mass student loan forgiveness is unfair to former borrowers, while 39.1% said it would be unfair for those who never had student loans. It is clear that a significant portion of Americans believe that the proposed initiative is an unequitable and unfair one. Legislating an expensive and volatile forgiveness program is irresponsible enough on its own, but it would go against a significant amount of the public, thus being the tyranny of the majority. Not only this, but the survey reports that slightly more than 56% of the respondents said that those who previously paid off their student loans should be compensated if the government does not implement widespread student loan forgiveness. This would add even more cost to the program inevitably, further increasing its stress on the economy and the federal budget. Contention 3, counterplan. My final contention hinges on the fact that the resolution does not solve the underlying issues with rising student loan debt in America. Therefore, a counterplan is introduced. It decrees that federal funding into loans for college students would be reduced. Secondly, it would force universities to co-sign on the loans they give out. This way, universities are incentivized to compete in order to provide better, cheaper education and would charge prices that consumers are able to afford. Pithocus 2022 states that under this proposed policy, it would be the individual schools who are responsible for guaranteeing the loan. If you had a school that was essentially charging outrageous tuition and just trying to milk students, trying to get as much money as they can without increasing their earnings capacity, then that type of school would probably have high default rates. Hubbard 22 says, the exponential rise in the cost of a student's education simply would not have been possible without government student loans. It is the definition of moral hazard in the extreme. The government doesn't need to worry about profits and loss. It doesn't need to worry about going out of business because it is bankrolled by the taxpayers in perpetuity. Otherwise, the resolution would provide only a temporary solution, which is why we propose a counterplan. Clarity 2019 states that, if anything, increases in financial aid in recent years have enabled colleges and universities blithely to raise their tuitions, confident that federal loan subsidies would help cushion the increase. Federal student aid policies do not cause college price inflation, but there's little doubt that they help make it possible. As we have proven, the aforementioned reasons dismantle the resolution and show why the negative is the proper course of action.